I've talked before about how heavy metals, including arsenic, has been showing up in baby food. Now there's new research that shows that all rice products have arsenic in them. 28% have levels exceeding what's considered safe for babies. So let's talk about it. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. David Berger, a board certified pediatrician in Tampa, Florida. My focus is on making healthy kids. How can we decrease toxins, optimize ability to detoxify, and make sure that all nutrition, lifestyles, everything are optimized to make sure that they can grow and be as happy and healthy as possible. Today, we're going to be talking about arsenic, one of the heavy metals, which, as I mentioned, has been something that's been found in baby food, and that's obviously super concerning, and it's in other rice-based products as well. So first of all, what is arsenic? It's a naturally occurring mineral found in both soil and in groundwater. And there is two different forms. There's inorganic and organic. And this doesn't have anything to do with organic food. Okay. Inorganic food is more of a salt. Organic is found that's more just naturally found in nature. Okay. So the inorganic will be in things like you could find it in contaminated groundwater. Besides rice, it's found in industrial waste. Whereas the organic arsenic is usually found in things like seafood. And as I said, the inorganic form is more toxic. Now, the reason why a lot of it is being found in rice is because the fields that rice is grown in, at least in certain parts of America, previously had lots of pesticides that included arsenic. And that was up until the 1980s. They started coming out then. But again, from a legacy perspective, if that local ground, obviously rain falls, but in the soil itself, if it's there, and if it's in high amounts, it's probably going to get into the food. Now, the residuals from do remain in the soil, and it's interesting because it's predominantly found in the south part of America, where rice is now grown. Now, originally, the arsenic was more used as pesticides for for fields that were growing cotton. And of course, that was more found in the South in America. So in the United States, it's more likely to be found there. But it hasn't been, that's not where it's being grown. But again, this is what's called legacy because it's still there. Okay. So what part of it is that rice, unlike other grains, are grown in water flooded fields, the rice paddies. And so the arsenic itself, it dissolves in the soil and it enters into the rice plants because it's just so saturated from the groundwater there, the soil. And interestingly, the healthier form of rice, brown rice, has more arsenic in it because it's in the outer bran, especially that's the bran. That's where it's actually covered. For the brown rice, it's a ground outer that, like when rice is, then the bran is taken off, that becomes other types of white rice. So there's new research now. It just came out right now, May 2025. 100% of all store-bought rice products, rice in a bag, just rice in a bag, 100% they found arsenic in it. Over 25% of it had a high enough amount of arsenic that it would be considered elevated by the FDA standards for what is allowed in infant cereal. So the only standard that they have set actually is the FDA is for baby food, not other people. But other metals, it's part of this study, were also found in the rice, such as lead, mercury, and cadmium. But it was really the arsenic that was the highest amount. So why is this a concern for babies? Well, young bodies, overall, brains, the ability to detoxify, they're more sensitive to toxins. And arsenic has been linked to neurodevelopmental disorders as well as to cancer. And infants, they will consume more rice per body weight than adults do. So it's more concentrated in a more susceptible population. Now, part of the issues also is that there's these gaps because the FDA says that a baby food product such as infant rice cereal can have up to 100 parts per billion with a B, very small amount of inorganic arsenic. That's the limit. Okay, but as I said, there's no limits to any other rice products. So whether it's rice cakes, rice snacks, toddler foods that have rice in it, there's no limit. They don't say that the food companies can't exceed this amount. And of course, just rice in general. Now, not so interesting, thankfully, The American Academy of Pediatrics is suggesting to families to minimize the arsenic exposure. They recognize it's a problem, is to have more grain diversity and limit rice intake, so other forms of grains that could be used instead. Now, there are things that a conscientious manufacturer could be doing to lower the amount of arsenic in the food. You'd think that they would want to, especially if they want people to continue to buy them. So they can go for low arsenic containing regions. So California, places in America outside the South, but also outside the country, places like Nepal, in India, Pakistan. They have found to have less arsenic in their rice compared to what we're seeing here. Okay. And really, we should be pushing these companies to do testing, to do labeling. If they have an arsenic free, put it on the label. Of course, are they going to want to put arsenic on the label? No, but you know what? Alcohol companies have to put warnings and labels. Tobacco companies have to put warning labels. Shouldn't our food products, if there's toxin in it, have those types of warnings as well? Okay. In addition to that, there are certain types of rice, in particular basmati rice and jasmine rice, that naturally do have a smaller amount of arsenic, especially compared to the brown rice, but other rice as well. So, what can parents do to see if there's a problem? And of course, this would be true for pregnant women who are carrying a fetus and wanting to not expose them to. Well, you could do a urine test. Every lab does this. It's called a fractionated arsenic level. So it can also tell you whether it's more organic or inorganic form. So that if you have just a total form, then you don't know which one it is. But if it's mostly the inorganic form, then it's more concerning. But a test can be done. Now, I am not so sure that it's going to catch everything, but certainly if the level in the urine is high, we got a problem. Now, also, there are things that can be done for cooking the rice. In particular, you can first start off rinsing the rice in water, under a flow of water, running water, for at least 30 seconds. But don't just run it under. Use your hands or like a strainer, agitate it, and mix it, trying to get as much of the surface of the rice to do the rinsing. Because there's the starchy surface on rice is where it can be, and so you can potentially rinse off some of that. Now, in addition, there is what's called we can cook in what's called a high water to rice ratio, 6 times or more of water for 1 part of rice in terms of volume. Okay, and then of course you drain the excess of water, and that method can reduce arsenic content by about 60%. That's pretty good. Not 100%, but I'll take 60% over no improvement. And of course, as said, we can be rotating the grains to reduce food exposure. So we can be offering kids other types of foods: oats, barley, millet, quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, and other whole grains. So they don't have to just be getting rice. And, and these are recommendations. You'll notice that there's actually no wheat that I mentioned there. So people can obviously do grains that aren't wheat if they're trying to avoid wheat or gluten. But the Academy of Pediatrics is certainly calling for this rotation. Now, there are also other just safe first foods that we can be doing, okay? And they're early foods for babies. And they can be other iron-rich foods that are low in arsenic. Things like lentils, meats, of course, safe cereals, the other, the grains that are considered cereals, they can be, you can give a baby quinoa as an example. But of course, you can, in my practice, I don't recommend giving rice cereal or at all. I don't think it's considered a default food, but there's no need to it. Realistically, it's just empty calories. Yes, there'll be some iron. You can get iron from elsewhere. Breastfed babies, even though there's less iron in breast milk, it's a more absorbable form. So we can, of course, be making sure that we're eating other food that's still healthy. Now, in terms of organic rice, which is kind of interesting, I mentioned it a little before. That's not what we're talking about with the type of arsenic. Studies have shown that both organic and more conventional rice both can exceed the safe arsenic level. When we talk about organic foods, we're mostly talking about pesticides, right? It doesn't really look at the content of the food. It's not looking at the nutritional value of the food. Does this organic orange actually have 60 milligrams of vitamin C in it like it's supposed to or not? That's not what organic is about. Of course, more conscientious companies may be growing in more nutrient-rich soil, but that's not part of the requirement to be considered organic. Now, of course, we could be doing, because, again, if it's coming in the water, it's all in those water fields. So I guess organic as opposed to inorganic, depending on if it's in those places in the world that don't have as much arsenic in there. Okay. Now, other synthetic chemicals are also avoided when it comes to organic foods. But again, this is not necessarily this isn't a synthetic chemical. It's a naturally occurring substance, is the arsenic. So again, that's part of why it's not part of the organic standards. So, and of course, in the end, you can choose rice from the lower regions. You can cook it properly. You can make sure that don't even look at the organic label for that particular purpose. You may still want to buy organic, but don't fool yourself. It's not an arsenic thing. All right. Well, I know that's a lot of information. It's pretty frustrating. Certainly, especially a lot of patients in my practice have to do things that are gluten free. Not a lot, but there's a good number. And where do they tend to go to? Rice based products. I've been recommending it for years, going back 25 years. If you're on a gluten free diet, look to rice. But I do also talk about other grains. But I know that there was a point in my career earlier on where we didn't know this and I wasn't pushing this hard. So now I'm pushing it. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe. Please share this with other people. Please stay tuned. I'll be doing lots more of these Making Healthy Kids videos as we go forward. Have a nice day.